Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Streets of Rage 4 on PS4. Nostalgia can be a comfortable thing, can't it? It can be nice and soothing to see classic games or characters come back around for one more run, one more chance at a shot at glory. And of recent, beat 'em up fans have been eating pretty good, with any number of titles from the arcades and the early console days coming back to show fans of the genre that developers still care. But will today's subject be able to fit into its gym clothes and be able to do enough pre-workout stretches to be able to keep from doing itself a major injury? Let's discuss 2020's Streets of Rage 4. Man, it has been some time since I talked about this franchise. When I last encountered the Streets of Rage series, they were the domain of the Sega Genesis, and the second title was the one that got me into this franchise. It was an earth-shaking, skull-crushing entry into the beat 'em up, a game I played solo or with friends to the point that the game was becoming one of the few I could speed run before that was a thing. But as with all good things, they cannot last. I really tried to like the third game. I really did. But it was changed enough from the previous title that I just couldn't enjoy it, and it really seemed kind of silly, like the developers are trying too hard to distinguish itself from that which came before. And the first game of the series was almost painfully generic. So the series faded into obscurity after the mid-1990s. Yet rumblings began in the late 2010s that someone was trying to bring the series back. It turned out to be true, and the developer Dotemu, a French developer known for remakes and remasters, along with a few other developers, were the ones responsible. But the team at Dotemu decided to update the timeline of the series to match both the time passed in the real world and to move the game world based on the events of the games themselves. So now the game is in year 20XX, shorthand for whatever the fuck you feel like imagining, it doesn't matter, but we have brought back several of our heroes from previous editions. In the 1990s games, the protagonists looked like bodybuilders and gym rats in their prime, the kind of people who only eat a single cucumber every 3 days or so, and bench press old Buicks for fun. But time has taken toll on our returning heroes. First up is Axel Stone, who has now grown out his beard and is slowly sliding into his own version of Fat Steven Seagal, and his old police partner and vigilante friend Blaze Fielding, who has gone from badass Barbie girl to thick with two C's Hurt Locker queen. And not seen in the playable action since Streets of Rage 1 is Adam Hunter, who looks more swole than ever and has strangely not aged a fucking day. In fact, looking even younger than his younger self. Holy shit, I want to know his secret to youth, aside from plastic surgery. But rounding out this team are the newcomers Cherry Hunter, Adam's daughter, who fights with an electric guitar and the literal power of rock and roll, and Floyd Auraria, a brick wall of a young man with cybernetic arms, the student of Dr. Zahn from Streets of Rage 3, a character I hated. But at least Floyd isn't too bad, and the developers tried to keep continuity. If anyone who's familiar with the old game is wondering where Eddie Skate Hunter, Adam's younger brother, is, well, dear listener, so was I. And after some internet sleuthing, I was able to uncover a host of fans asking the developers the exact same thing. Their response was that Skate had of course by now grown up and moved on with his life, and would not be present for these events. I suppose being forced to commit multiple homicides while you were still a tween on rollerblades can do that to you. They are not the only characters that will become available, but for the base game, which I played, these are the ones we can select from to break the forces of the Y Syndicate. And who are the Y Syndicate? Well, let's get into the story. Yes, beat 'em up with a coherent story. My, how the world has changed. It has now been many years since the final and fatal downfall of crime syndicate boss Mr. X, who once ruled Wood Oak City with an iron fist. Long ago, Axel, Adam, and Blaze turned in their police badges to fight Mr. X and his gang, especially after Mr. X bought off the entire police force. And of course, they were able to slaughter his gang members and defeat the crime boss, who got away. Barely a year later, Mr. X returned and kidnapped Adam, which called forth Axel and Blaze, and a new crew of vigilantes to help, including Skate and Axel's friend Max Thunder, a former pro wrestler. And the group smashed their way from city to the jungle to the vague south of somewhere to defeat Mr. X and his robotics factory. 2 years after that, Wood Oak is subjected to a thermonuclear bombing that killed thousands. Yes, this is the actual plot of the third game. And the cops ask Adam to find the rest of the bombs, and then call on Axel and Blaze to take the fight to the new Rising Syndicate, which they do, and Skate tags along, as well as Dr. Zahn, a former Syndicate scientist who has defected, especially since his head is now mounted on a robot body. And he tells the team what Mr. X has been doing, and after Adam finds a second bomb waiting to go off, the team disarms it and finds a new factory of Mr. X, who has barely survived his previous defeat, and he is now a brain in a jar. I wish I was making that up. Anyway, the team smashes the jar and destroys X once and for all. And for a while, things are safe. And thus, the 1990s Streets of Rage games came to a close. But 10 years later, here we are. The city is mostly rebuilt with funds from who knows where that have allowed for sky monorails, glass towers, and all sorts of space-age Star Trek horseshit. But the area they could not rebuild due to the bomb has become a haven for criminal activity under the control of the Y Syndicate, run by the twins Mr. and Ms. Y. While the police are better equipped to handle it, and even sport nearly science fiction levels of stun batons and laser riot shields, the corrupt commissioner was focusing on smaller crimes to let the new syndicate have its way. But as you can guess, when things get too big and the Ys are planning to destroy the city, guess who comes back out of retirement but Axel and Blaze, alongside Cherry Hunter, who is looking for her dad. Damn, but Adam disappears a lot in the series. And Floyd, Dr. Zahn's apprentice, who has chosen to cut off his natural arms and have cybernetic replacements fit in its stead. The crew gets right to work, tackling the streets of the game that are similar to the first few, with new updates like cars trying to smash into the heroes and sections of the streets falling away that enemies can be tossed into. From here, and level by level, the heroes must storm the police precinct to destroy the corrupt commissioner and his loyal men, to a cargo ship to cross the bay, to an old city pier and the city underground, a staple of beat-em-ups since Final Fight, to the Chinatown section, an art gallery owned by the Syndicate, a SkyTrain monorail, Y Tower, built on the site of the former X Tower, city rooftops heading to an EDM concert, and finally the island owned by the Y twins, where the heroes will storm what looks like a castle transported from Europe that culminates into a fight where the twins battle it out in a tag team fashion with the heroes until one of them hops into a giant mechanical spider, I wish I was kidding, that swipes at the battlefield and tosses grenades, while the other twin continues the fight with the team barehanded until the twins and their spider are defeated. Along the way, we will revisit old settings from Streets of Rage 2 and 3, and fighting a who's who of famous bosses from the last 3 games, including Barbon the Bouncer and Shiva, Mr. X's old right-hand executioner. But there will be a few new foes, mainly Estelle Aguirre, a member of the city SWAT team who is trying to take down the heroes thinking they are criminals and murderers. And let's be honest, she's not entirely wrong with how many people the team have just beaten to death. And Max Thunder himself, who has been brainwashed by the Y twins into fighting his friends. Did I get off track with the story? Yes, kind of. There's a lot of fan service to cover, because this game fairly drips with it. Anyway, yeah, our heroes are beating associated gang members with silly nicknames and specialties like rented mules while chasing these twins, with each stage being somehow connected to the gang and its information. Many of the game's bosses are fairly one-note and not really that interesting, and I have a particular problem with the boss of the late-game concert stage. which is just some lame-ass, unnamed brainwashed DJ using some sort of electricity powers and drones. Possibly one of the worst beat-em-up bosses I've ever fought. But the other ones you fight are exciting, and really a return to the form of the series has had during and since the early 90s. The battles against Estelle can be thrilling, and you will convince her of the evils of the Syndicate. Unlocking Adam to join your primary party mid-game is a wonderful hit of dopamine and nostalgia. Trading punches with an old ally is a ton of fun, and despite how wild it sounds, the final stage on the island, seemingly being incongruous with the rest of the feel of the game, is wild in the best way. But all of this is in service of a massive revenge plot by the Y twins, in which they seek to destroy Wood Oak City once and for all to avenge their dead criminal daddy. You know, since he couldn't have it to play with, it's better crushed under their heels. Beat 'em ups at the best of times rarely made sense, most of them just being a collection of wild flights of fancy badly stitched together with the through line thread of the martial arts heroes and some mustache twirling bad guy who has an army of costume maniacs at his service that are played off one another. But Streets of Rage 4 at least tries to keep this coherent, and mostly succeeds. Better yet, the stages are bright and colorful, with a new hand-drawn look as opposed to the older but still quality sprite work, art style, and all sorts of wicked ephemera, while still retaining the 2.5D side-scrolling format, with a few secrets to be found among the backgrounds when doors get kicked open or crates get busted along the way. There are also a ton of unlocks in this game, with success per level building towards unlocking new character skins, by which I mean old character skins where you can play the game through as the sprite incarnations of the characters, the ability to change the look of the food you pick up off the street and eat along the way, yay, oil drum roast beef, and a few other bits and bobs, mostly cosmetic stuff that doesn't much affect the gameplay, but are fun nonetheless. The DLC adds 3 new playable characters, those being Max, Estelle, and Shiva, and a new challenge mode. Yeah, it's simple stuff, but this is a simple game, lovingly crafted by the team at Dotemu to reflect a simpler time when we were transitioning from the arcades to the home console as our venue of choice for gaming. The developers have at least tried to emulate the arcade experience with online matchmaking and co-op play, and did do local play as well, so you can have a friend in the room or several online to play along. Although to be honest, you can beat the game handily as a single player experience. I know I did, several times through. This is also a rare time when I talk about video game music in my reviews, but the soundtrack to Streets of Rage 4 is an absolute banger of music tracks, with returning series legend Yuzo Koshiro, who made some of the most memorable tunes for Streets of Rage 2, along with French game composers, several more Japanese composers, and a number of electronic music artists who I'm sure are all very well known in their fields, but since I'm a dyed-in-the-wool metalhead, I'm not familiar with them. But that has hardly stopped me from enjoying these tracks to help keep the blood pumping and make you want to keep driving forward between waves of ridiculous goons in a combination of pseudo-cyberpunk outfits, militarized police gear, and karate gis. The soundtrack alone is worth buying this game. Reviews for Streets of Rage 4 were generally favorable, in the same way most review aggregate sites and our usual cast of game review suspects, what a group that would, in the words of Mad Magazine, be called the usual gang of idiots, reviews games that didn't blow them like a pack of low-rent syphilitic strippers, which means they gave the game good reviews, but not 9s or 10s, which in the parlance of gaming means the game might as well be dog shit. Most reviewers liked it, but for a few whiners who complained it was too stuck in the past. You know, the same ones who bitch and whine that we need innovation in games, but when we get innovation, they bitch and whine that it's not the right kind of innovation, or something, but when we get time-tested formula, it's a slave to the past or some shit. And I would once again take the time to remind the professional review community that you are not poet laureates, but are just writing about a very specific form of disposable entertainment while waiting for anyone, dear God, anyone to take you seriously between novel or movie script pitches you hope will make you rich. If anyone listening thinks that was directed at them specifically, it wasn't, but go ahead and think that if it makes you feel better about yourself. I got lucky when I picked up a copy of this title at my local used game store, and I definitely got my money's worth at a significantly lower price than what they are asking for this game on the PlayStation Digital Store. I was able to hammer my way through this game in about 4 to 5 hours on my own, but I was having so much fun that I barely noticed the time passing. And then I played the game again and again, trying to see how much chaos I could cause and what the fighting styles of each of the playable characters looked like. So I definitely beat this game at least 5 times through in rapid succession. What do I mean by all this? I mean that this game is one you should pick up on sale and come in expecting a short game. A good party game for you and a small group of friends who are looking for a great beat 'em up. Or if you are either a fan of the franchise or beat 'em ups in general, a genre that is still not doing great in this current age despite several amazing titles in recent years. Streets of Rage 4 is definitely worth the time you put into it. I've never been shy about my love for this type of game, or the side-scrolling fighting genre. And like so many long-running games, I tend to like the even-numbered sequels most. The Streets of Rage series has proved no different here, and I was so glad to be back in this setting, fighting the good fight against the greatest hits of the series' past glory. I do try quite hard not to let nostalgia for the past games and good times color my view of the present, but fuck that noise. Sometimes you just have to sit back and enjoy the ride. If a game you loved as a kid doesn't hold up now, who gives a hot shit? You enjoyed it once, and that is enough. If you play a sequel to a sequel that comes out years after the last entry, but it reminds you achingly hard of the past, then the developers did it right. And if you can't come to terms with that, I believe this is what the kids call a you problem. Streets of Rage 4 punches all the right buttons, right before it slams your skull into the nearest brick wall in a cascade of agony and pretty colored lights, but in a good way. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad, Keith Gasper, Orden Wells, and Mass Llama for being patrons of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.